Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to the Metropolis Health Limited Q3 FY21 earnings conference call hosted by Ambit Capital. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode. There will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star and then 0 on your touchtone telephone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on the date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involve risks and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. I now hand over the call to Mr. Nikhil Mathur from Ambit Capital. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Elma, and good morning, everyone. On behalf of Ambit Capital, I welcome you all to the Q3 FY21 earnings call of Metropolis Healthcare Limited. Today we have with us senior management team of the company represented by Ms. Ameera Shah, Managing Director, Mr. Vijender Singh, CEO, and Mr. Rakesh Agarwal, CFO. With this, I'll hand over the call to the management. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Q3 FY21 earnings call. I hope you and everyone around you is safe and healthy. I'm joined today by Vijender Singh and Rakesh and HCI IR advisor. The presentation and press release has been issued to stock exchanges and uploaded on our company website. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to go through the same. Let me start by sharing with you that recently Metropolis has been conferred with the Gold Award in 2 categories at India Health and Wellness Award 2020. The categories were COVID Diagnostic Brand category and Health Awareness Campaign. Metropolis has always put its patients and community first, and we look forward to doing more impactful work to have a positive impact on society. Now let me touch upon what have been the recent developments in the industry and the economy. As you are aware, that with the vaccination drive, India could well be in the last leg of the crisis, with new cases falling, coupled with the recovery of existing patients. We should be proud of ourselves, the government, and especially the doctors and frontline workers who have worked to tackle this crisis. With the vaccination being underway, India is on the move to potentially move past the COVID-19 crisis and enter a post-COVID era soon. We at Metropolis and its every member are extremely satisfied in playing our role in this recovery, and will continue to support until we are completely past this crisis. During Q3, lockdown restrictions were eased. However, it is important to note that healthcare, unlike other industries, is very hyper-local. Different conditions and situations have prevailed in cities and states, and therefore operational performance has not been uniform all across. While B2C recovery has been better, B2B recovery, especially from hospitals, are yet to return to fully normal levels, which is partially reflected in our overall non-COVID growth as well. Accordingly, Q3 FY21 revenue increased by 23% on a year-on-year basis, with EBITDA margin before CSR and ESOP at a healthy 32.6%, up by 430 basis points YOY. Of the total revenue, non-COVID business contributed 81%, while COVID business contributed 19% to total revenue. The revenue growth in Q3 was led by 10% increase in patient visits and 7% increase in number of tests, and our sincere efforts in all areas of business development, including increasing the physical coverage of doctors, penetrating home testing services in newer cities, increasing specialized tests, and deepening digital initiatives and engagements through various campaigns seem to have resulted in this. While we continue to focus on growing our business, we have been equally prudent on the cost side as well, leading to operating leverage benefits. The factors contributing to expansion in EBITDA margin are better test mix, increased B2C contribution, better cost control through automation and digitization, leading to overall operating efficiency. Non-COVID revenue is improving quarter by quarter, but since the healthcare industry is still to resume to normal levels, this is a journey as various geographies are in some version of lockdown, with general sentiment still being cautious. COVID revenue, on the other hand, as expected, continues to moderate gradually month on month. Although it contributed a significant portion of revenue during Q3, we expect the revenue contribution to moderate going ahead. COVID revenue reduced on account of lower COVID tests in volume terms, coupled with lower price of COVID tests, Going ahead, we expect COVID tests to become one of the routine tests as vaccination programs continue to take place. Let me now touch upon the home testing part of the business. We believe ramping up the home testing will play an important role in enhancing brand equity of Metropolis in the minds of the consumer. Our efforts on this front have shown positive results. The revenue from home visit testing, excluding COVID, has increased 34% from 19 crores to 25 crores in Q3 FY21. As a percentage of B2C business, this has expanded by 660 bits to 26.4% in Q3 FY21 from 19.8% in Q3 FY20. Including COVID, home testing grew by 110% from 19 crores in Q3 FY20 to 40 crores in Q3 FY21. We have scaled up home testing services to 59 locations as of December 20th, from 13 locations in September 20. We aim to widen our reach to 200 locations by the end of FY21. We will continue to focus on ramping up the home testing services to newer locations as well as to increase the portfolio of tests available for home testing services. Digital initiatives is playing a very important role in aiding the growth of our home testing services, which allows us to create long-term loyal customers and enhance the brand value of our business. Coming to the M&A strategy. M&A is one of the most important pillars of our growth, and you are already aware that we recently announced the acquisition of South India-based Hitech Diagnostics in a cash and stock deal as part of that strategy. Let me just highlight the strategic rationale behind the acquisition. In India, diagnostics is a regional play. There are very few good quality labs operating in the country with a patient-first approach, having scale and size. Further, only few of these labs are pure pathology and not a mix of radiology and pathology. Our approach towards acquisition has been to strengthen the leadership position in our existing markets and get disproportionate benefits over time via synergies in people, lab network, infrastructure, and customers. The Hitech acquisition will allow us to build on this scale already created in our focus cities of Bangalore and Chennai, while getting access to newer towns in rest of Tamil Nadu with new customer profile, and this will create a larger and sustainable opportunity for Metropolis. Once the transaction is complete, we will be able to share more details on the acquisition and the plan forward. Adding to our leadership position in South India, we have upgraded our laboratory in Cochin with better infrastructure and enhanced test menu. This facility will help in a faster turnaround time and enhance the customer experience manifold, along with 100 plus network centers that we have in the state of Kerala. It is also in line with a strategy to grow, gain market share, and increase B2C revenue. Let me now highlight the key points which will be the focus of Metropolis in the coming times. Number one, we will be focusing on ramping up the non-COVID part of the business. The business has already reached normalcy in Q3. Ramping up the non-COVID business will bring further growth and sustainability. Number two, integrate Hitech Diagnostics into Metropolis in a smooth and time-bound manner, leading to synergistic benefits in terms of revenue and cost to Metropolis. Number three, improve the profitability to increase specialty tests, increase B2C business, home testing services, continuous optimization of cost structure through automation and digitization. And number four, enhance the brand equity of Metropolis through digital marketing efforts via social media, which brings customer engagement, creating digital partnerships, doctor engagement, and a B2B portal, enabling us to complete end-to-end digital service provider for all our stakeholders. I'm particularly happy to share that during Q3, about 21 crores of revenue came via leads generated through digital media, which is almost 8% of the total top line of Q3. With the new website, app, performance marketing efforts all working in sync with a customer-first approach, we have touched a base of 45 million audience in the last few quarters. We believe the digital presence and integration will play a key factor going ahead, not only in brand creation, lead generation, and improving customer experience, but home testing services as well, which have grown rapidly. 2020 taught every one of us the importance of health, hygiene, preventive wellness, and care. I'm happy Government of India has reciprocated the importance of this to doubling the allocation to health sector at 2.2 lakh crore in the budget 21 as compared to last year. Government intends to strengthen three areas: preventive health, curative health, and well-being during the current year. We will be more than happy to partner with the government in this journey to fasten this process and strengthen health services across the country. Lastly, as we remain confident of business going ahead and particularly our cash flows and balance sheet, the Board of Directors has recommended an interim dividend of Rs 8 per equity share. That's all from my side. I would now like to hand over to Vijender to take you through some of the operational parameters.
Yeah, thank you, Ameera, and good morning, everyone. Let me give you a perspective on our operational parameters. For Q3 FY21, we reported patient visits of 2.7 million, registering a growth of 10% on year-on-year basis. We conducted 5.1 million tests versus 4.8 million in Q3 FY20, up by 7% year-on-year. Including COVID-19, revenue per patient increased by 12% year-on-year to rupees 1029, and revenue per test increased by 15% to rupees 537. On a like-to-like basis, non-COVID revenue per patient increased by 4% year-on-year basis to rupees 959, and revenue per test increased marginally year-on-year to rupees 468. Our revenue profile among focused, seeding and other cities stood at as follows. Focus cities, 5 cities including the city and peripheral area around metropolitan region, contribution stood at 58% in Q3 FY21 as compared to 61% in Q3 FY20. Seeding cities, 8 cities including the city and peripheral area around the region, contribution has moved from 21% in Q3 FY20 to 25% in Q3 FY21 on the back of our increased efforts in branding in the seeding cities, while other cities' contribution has been the same as 18%. Our B2C revenue in focus cities in Q3 FY21 for non-COVID business has now reached 61% as compared to 54% in Q3 FY20. This has been a result of various marketing initiatives undertaken by the company over the last year in standardizing as well as upgrading the customer service levels on continuous basis. With respect to geographic distribution, I would like to point out that revenue contribution from North region witnessed a substantial improvement from 7% in Q3 FY20 to 13% in Q3 FY21, partly aided by COVID wave in the month of October and November in the North, but also due to increasing brand awareness of Metropolis in the North region. With respect to test mix on volume and value basis, excluding COVID-19, specialized tests contributed 16% of the total volumes in Q3 FY21 as compared to 13% in Q3 FY20, which is our focus area. Excluding COVID-19, specialized test contribution increased from 37% to 43%. The volume and value mix overall continues to see an improvement. As Ameera pointed out, we will continue to focus on ramping up the non-COVID tests, focus on improving profitability through better test mix, increased B2C business, ramp up home visit and cost optimization efforts, and build a stronger Metropolis brand through focused marketing initiatives, keeping customer experience at its core. As part of the recently announced acquisition, our efforts are also geared towards integration of high-tech with Metropolis. We will, upon closure of the acquisition, look to integrate the portfolio of services across the two brands and strengthen the go-to-market proposition, with an aim to leverage the brand positioning of both the entities. That's all from my side. I will ask Rakesh to take you through the financials. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Vijender. Good morning to everyone on the call. Let me give you a snapshot of our financial performance. Q3 financial year 21 revenue stood at rupees 275 crore as compared to rupees 223 crore in Q3 financial year 20, up by 23% year-on-year. Non-COVID revenue contributed 81% of the revenue, while COVID revenue contributed to the rest 19% of the revenue during Q3. Non-COVID revenue stood at rupees 224 crore in Q3 financial year 21, posting a marginal growth over the same quarter last year. COVID revenue stood at rupees 51 crore in Q3 financial year 21. It was approximately rupees 100 crore in Q2 financial year 21. We expect the COVID revenue to continue to moderate going ahead as well. However, we expect the non-COVID revenue growth to partly set off the revenue downtick from COVID revenue going ahead. EBITDA before CSR and ESOP stood at rupees 89.7 crore in Q3 financial year 21 as compared to rupees 63.1 crore in Q3 financial year 20, up by 42% year-on-year. EBITDA margin before CSR and ESOP stood at 32.6% in Q3 financial year 21, up by 430 basis points on Y-on-Y basis on the back of better product mix, increased B2C contribution, and better control over fixed and operating cost. Q3 21 PAT stood at rupees 58.6 crores as compared to rupees 42 crores in Q3 financial year 20, up by 40% year-on-year. Q3 financial year 21 PAT margin stood at 21.3%, margin expansion of 240 basis points as compared to Q3 financial year 20. We have continued to focus on our collection efficiency. Our debtor days has improved from 55 days in March 20 to 45 days in December 20. Overall working capital days has slightly improved from 11 days in March 20 to 10 days in December 20. Our liquidity positions remain very strong with cash and cash equivalent of 381 crore as on December 2020. OFC to EBITDA stood at healthy 83% for 9 months financial year 21. The board of directors have declared an interim dividend of rupees 8 per share. Even after factoring in the additional that we will take to fund the acquisition of Hitech Diagnostics, our balance sheet will be well capitalized and comfortable debt equity ratio and strong OCF and FCF generation. We expect to repay that acquisition debt well within next 3 years. That's it from my side. We now leave the floor open for Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Anyone who has a question may press star and 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Our first question is from the line of Pratik Mandhana from Nomura. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Ma'am, my question is more towards the industry side. One, that how do you expect the B2B versus B2C industry growth rates? And as you said that companies focusing on EBITDA margin expansion through B2C. And I see that one of our peers who mainly operates in B2B has much higher EBITDA margins than the B2C players. So how do you explain that?
So let me talk this is generally about it. I don't want to comment on any specific company, but look, the issue is not about B2C or B2B. I think that's a incorrect comparison. I think the focus is about the test menu side, which is what helps in determining profitability and the product mix. So what happens generally is, let's say if you're running a B2B business and you are offering a large test menu like us, for example, 4,000 varieties, then the kind of customer that comes to you is a customer which is referred to by a specialist because they believe our quality, they want to get a specialized test done. But when you are offering all 4,000 varieties of tests, you are not able to necessarily make the same margin on all tests. There will be many tests on which the volumes are low, and therefore your margins are low because you don't have economies of scale. But in providing that complete product portfolio, you are able to get a much higher stickiness of business because you're one of the few people who are providing those kind of services in the country. There are other models which are to focus on smaller test menu, only 100 or 200 tests, and try to build volume in those few hundred tests. So these are very different models, and I don't think they are comparable at all in terms of the profitability. Now, when you talk about B2B and B2C, if let's say a company like ours which is doing 4,000 varieties of tests and we are doing B2B in a good quality, the margins are still good because you're controlling your discounts, you're controlling your service costs, etc. And your business is not being driven from this discounting to customers, but your business is being driven through your services, through your quality of reports, your scientific foot forward. But obviously, B2B will give you a further stickiness of your brand because you're dealing directly with the end patient and the end doctor. You're not dealing with the middle channel, which is of B2B. So therefore, our belief is that we would like to continue to build on the B2C part of the business as we keep increasing, at least in our focus schedules, as we have mentioned. We've reached now 61% B2C ratio as of this quarter in our focus cities. And our goal we had always maintained was close to 65. We are well on our way there. And we believe this will not only give us a better stickiness of business, but an enhanced profitability as we have seen playing out in our operating margins as well. Going forward, I think the B2C part of the business so far has recovered a little bit better because, like we said, hospitals are still providing COVID care and therefore not fully seeing non-COVID patients. Also, the smaller labs, some of them have shut down, some of them have, still not operating, and therefore the B2C part of the business is growing a little bit faster at this point.
Okay, that's helpful, ma'am. Ma'am, just one more thing. If you can, you give the growth expectation for the market. If you can split the growth expectation in B2B and B2C, which is expected to grow faster for the market as a whole? And secondly, what kind of EBITDA margins do we make on B2B and B2C? If you can even give a qualitative sense, is B2B EBITDA margin higher for our company or B2C EBITDA margin higher?
So generally for the industry, like I said, my expectation is B2C will grow a little bit faster than B2B in the coming many months for the various reasons I mentioned. Specifically for Metropolis, we won't be able to give any guidance on growth, but as far as the margin profile, there is probably a difference of 7-8%, I would say between 5 to 10% between B2B and B2C in terms of margin profile. Again, we don't do our profitability separately in terms of B2C and B2B, so I can't give you accurate numbers. These are guesstimates because at the end of the day, they are using shared infrastructure for backend, and therefore we don't have separate P&L for both.
Okay, just to confirm that B2C is higher by 5 to 10%, right? My understanding is correct, right? Okay. Okay, thank you. And then, ma'am, second, as our home collection is increasing, so how is the profitability in those tests? So how will that impact the company's profitability in long term? And one more thing, with increasing online aggregators, how do we expect our B2B and B2C to move? So what will happen to the industry and Metropolis?
So your first question was on home service profitability. I think we have mentioned in the last two calls also that we believe the home service profitability to be good. We therefore have been seeing also some as homes have been increasing. We have been seeing some of that benefit of the operating margin come to the bottom line as we have been seeing EBITDA expansion. So we don't see any large concern there. Because home services is created by pull, it's not a push product at this point. We are not doing it in a push product way where we are sort of incentivizing customers through schemes and promotions, but we are doing it more through a pull, which is based on our service and quality. So that's one. As far as the aggregators look, there are very few aggregators in the system at this point of time, and they have been largely pre-COVID focused on wellness. And I think that continues. I don't see too much of a change as wellness is picking up. I'm sure they will start to pick up business again. We have not seen them really come into the illness space in any significant way. And because in the illness space, finally, where you get your test done is dependent on what the doctor accepts. It is not about only what the patient says that, okay, I can get the cheapest price. And therefore, if aggregators are building businesses as marketplaces where they are offering services from multiple different providers, that's okay. But if aggregators are choosing to give their own lab reports for illness patients, then of course that may or may not be accepted by the doctor. The aggregators following, we have partnered with a few aggregators where we are giving our own reports as long as the terms are fair for both parties.
Thank you, ma'am. That's helpful. That's all from my side.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Chandramouli Muthiah from Goldman Sachs. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for taking my questions. The first question is on the non-COVID realization. So it seems to be a steady pickup even quarter on quarter. I think last quarter was about 926, this quarter at 959, and the previous fiscal year was closer to 870. So just trying to understand, there's been again a quarter on quarter improvement in non-COVID price per patient. So what part of this is sustainable, and could you just talk us through some of the other factors involved, whether IL-6 and D-dimer is sort of playing a part, and if there are other factors as well involved?
Vivinder, you want to take that?
Yeah. In fact, this non-COVID business, actually, if you look at our business mix, as Ameera mentioned, that our home visit contribution is also significantly growing, and it has grown by almost about 34%. So where the revenue per patient is pretty much higher, even higher than the walk-in patient. So this contributes to higher revenue per patient. And then second is important is that look at the retail contribution of our focus cities, where today we are talking about 61% retail contribution coming from focus cities. So all these, yields the increase in non-COVID revenue per patient. And then, of course, third important part is the test mix, where our specialized contribution has gone up by to 40% approx. So these three, four things impact the non-COVID. And in terms of future also, as the home visit contribution goes up, today we are covering almost 59 cities. So once we further, penetrate into other cities, we expect that non-COVID at least should grow at a decent, revenue per patient.
Got it. And just as a follow-up to that, could you just maybe let us know what the non-COVID volume trend is looking like? YOY?
Yeah. In Q3, I think the non-COVID volume has also picked up to some extent as compared to quarter two, but still not back to normal. But definitely it's growing.
Got it. That's helpful. My second question is on the antibody testing. So I think we count it as part of our non-COVID sales. So just trying to understand, last quarter, I think we did 100 crores of RT-PCR revenue and about 10 crores of antibody testing. So this quarter, I think it's about 51 crores RT-PCR, but if you could just let us know what the antibody revenue was this quarter.
Yeah, COVID revenue has been at 50 crore and almost about, I think, 2.5% contribution is from rub-off tests.
2.5% of the total revenue is from rub-off tests?
Yeah.
Got it. And the antibody realization, has that come down QOQ, or as I understand, there's not too much antibody testing price caps, right? It's only on the RT-PCR side. So just trying to understand the antibody realization as well.
Yeah, antibody, since it is not that significant as of now, but we are definitely gung-ho about the antibody because post-vaccination also, a patient would need to monitor their antibody levels, so hence we expect that antibody should pick up. But till now, it's not been that great because the acceptance of antibody has not been there. Still RT-PCR rules in terms of acceptance. So it's not that significant, but however, on the revenue per test of antibody has been more or less stagnant. But in some states, there has been a capping also.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you very much and all the best.
Thank you. We'll take a next question from the line of Praveen Sahai from Edelweiss Financial Services. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my question and many congratulations for a very strong set of numbers. So, ma'am, one thing on the margin sustainability side, definitely you had highlighted about the B2C specialized test, then home visit. But this 31.5% of margin for back-to-back 2 quarters, how is there any element of one-off in that, and how sustainable these margins are?
See, the margin expansion is a combination of 2 factors, actually 3 factors. One is volume obviously coming in on the existing infrastructure, which means economies of scale benefit that has come through COVID testing coming into existing infrastructure. That's one. Number 2, it is out of better cost management and driving efficiency on the side of Metropolis through our own efforts. And number 3, it's a product mix and channel mix. So I think the second and the third are sustainable because those are under our influence. But the first one obviously is not under our influence. So as sort of COVID volumes decrease as we go forward, I think definitely there will be some impact as far as the margin profile in terms of the sustainability of EBITDA margin. But number 2 and 3, the product mix, channel mix, as well as the costs that we reduce, I think we believe there are sustainable.
Okay.
There is no one-off. There is no one-off in this.
There's no one-off. No.
So COVID volume definitely is going to go down from here. So
any quantification you can do on the margin front, how much that can be sustainable for you?
Very, very difficult to actually, because we are all sort of on the same infrastructure. But obviously we are, difficult for us to give you a quantification at this point.
Okay. Second question, ma'am, on the digital media leads, as you had highlighted, 21 crore of our revenue we had generated for this quarter. How big you wanted to make this as a percentage of sales, and what exactly, what initiatives you have actually taken in that? Is that just a geographical, penetration you are increasing or getting a revenue, or is there something else to know about?
See, digital, of course, is the start of a journey. As you know, in healthcare, digital has not played any role. I mean, if you compare this to a year ago, digital revenue was probably less than 1% of our revenue in the same quarter, and today it's about 8%. So clearly, I think COVID has played some catalytic role, as we have been mentioning in the last few calls, on getting customers and patients to at least start to use digital as a medium. Not always to provide just the service provided, but at least from a booking perspective. And people are using this more as a medium in healthcare, which was never the case before.
So any aspiration as a percentage of sales you want to generate revenue from the digital?
Hello?
It looks like Miss.
Okay, so I'll answer. I'll take this. See, in our internal discussions, what we are currently doing, we are trying to sort of track a ratio between click versus brick. This is a loosely used term in our internal discussions, but primarily going forward, we want to track this because accordingly we'll start allocating our resources. So as of now, this click business contribution is close to 8%. However, on the other side, our footfalls to centers has also started increasing. So we'll keep a track of this ratio and then accordingly sort of allocate resources. But yes, on digital front, we would continue to sort of focus on from marketing point of view.
Yeah, I got dropped off. I'm sure Vijender answered the question. Just to add to that, there are many things which can be done digitally. One, of course, is the tools where we can do targeting new customers and patients who have not been part of the Metropolis family before, and bringing them into the ecosystem, which is obviously one part of it. There are also other ways of actually now newly engaging with patients and doctors to actually make it easier for them to be able to interact with us, whether it's through providing more information, educating them on products, because these are very technical products, obviously, that we sell. So using that as an opportunity to create engagement and education, giving them the chance to book the transaction, talk to our pathologist, interact with us through bots, and also to be able to get services. For example, could be tracking their reports, it could be looking at past reports. There are many such features which have been introduced now through digital, which basically brings the consumer and the doctor closer to Metropolis. Now, how this will result and what are the consequences of it, I think we will find out along the journey. It's very difficult to sort of say that this is the number and we are heading towards that. But we are very hopeful and enthused by the early reaction that we have seen. And we believe that we'll continue to track this, and this will be a new parallel track for us to pursue.
Great, ma'am. Lastly, ma'am, on the home testing, as you had extended to 59 locations, do you have any target of reaching out to your locations? How much more to add in that?
Yes. So we are planning to get to about 200 locations by the end of 21.
Okay, great. Thank you, ma'am, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to our participants, if you wish to ask a question, you may enter star and 1. Our next question is from the line of Arpit Shah from Stallion Asset. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Just wanted to understand how the realization would differ between lab and home testing, and also how the economic...
Mr. Shah, we're not able to hear you that clearly, sir. If you're on a speaker mode, switch it to handset, please.
Yeah. Just wanted to understand how the realization would differ between lab and home testing, and also how the unit economics would trickle down from there, like if the lab testing is, let's say, 100 rupees, and whether home testing would be 110 or 150, and how the raw material costs, employees, and other expenses would pan out from there in terms of unit economics.
See, I think, again, lab and home testing are not the only two channels, right? So you're asking, I'm assuming, in terms of a walk-in patient who walks into the lab versus a patient who, does the same test at a home testing, right? So usually what happens is that when you're doing testing at home, while the appointment may be booked for one person at home, sometimes other members of the family may also use that opportunity to give their blood and get testing done. That, of course, is not a constant. That happens in some cases, does not happen in all cases. While in a walk-in, it's usually one patient, sort of walking in at a time. So that's one difference. In terms of unit economics, home visits actually may be more profitable from the perspective that you don't have physical centers where you're paying rent, or the phlebotomist is not sitting there all day but is mobile and therefore able to go and fulfill sort of leads in an entire area versus waiting for patients to come to them. So therefore, home visits, we believe, are more profitable than a walk-in into a laboratory. And of course, when you also say a walk-in, please remember we have multiple channels. One is sort of a PSC, which is our own centers. We also have partner franchise centers. We also have doctor collection centers. So there are many different, and the commercials and the sharings are actually different in all. So it's very difficult for me to give you a off-the-bat answer. But generally, you will find home visit to be more profitable.
So the realization difference would be about 10 or 15%?
Again, it depends on which channel we are talking about. If you're talking about a walk-in patient, the realizations of home visits will be similar or slightly higher. But if you're talking about, for example, a walk-in patient, that's a walk-in patient to our own center. If you're talking about a walk-in patient in a doctor center, then those realizations are much lower. So again, in the B2C, the different channels give you different realizations, even within walk-in.
Okay, just a follow-up on that. Where do you see the revenue mix of home testing move from, let's say, 11% of total revenue in the next 3 years?
Sorry, where do we see home testing?
Home testing move from 11% of total revenues now to what percentage of revenues, let's say, in the next 3 years?
We don't have a quantification at this point of time what direction we go in, because we also don't know yet how consumers are going to behave post-COVID. So home visits and all of this has, of course, increased a lot during COVID, and we believe that it will continue. Our internal goal would be we would like to double this number as a percentage of revenue. But whether that is in a matter of 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, I think it's very difficult to comment at this stage.
Got it. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Yash Gupta from Angel Broking. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. First question, we have closed down around to be 254 service network in this quarter. How much revenue we have lost due to it? Any quantified number?
Vijender, you want to take that?
Yeah, the revenue loss actually cannot be quantified yearly basis, but largely if you take an average, would be about close to almost about 1.5 crore approx. But however, some of the business has been moved to B2B also. It's not that we've shut down these centers, but some of them, who were sort of potential kind of, for future growth, and those have been converted to B2B.
Okay. Follow up on that. Where we can see this number to go from 2477 service center within next 1 year? What's the thought process behind it? Where we want to
be
within?
Yeah. In fact, we initiated this expansion plan in Q3, and Q3 we have added almost about 100 centers. And probably Q4 also we continue to add at least 75 to 100 more centers. And then in future, maybe next year we'll look at the situation, because we have to also track business which is coming to our centers, which is again, which I just mentioned that, we have to keep a track of ratio between digital versus, patients walking to our centers. So this ratio we are keeping an eye, and basis that we'll continue to sort of, take our stances. But however, for next year, probably we may take a stance where we may increase by another 500 centers approx.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take our next question from the line of Sayantan Maji from Credit Suisse. Please go ahead.
Hi. Actually, a couple of clarification on the Hitech acquisition. One, when you guys mentioned that this will be EPS accretive from day one, what kind of amortization are you building in on that acquisition cost?
So just to give you a prospect that right now we have not acquired, and there will be a lot of valuation and PP and everything will be done as per the statutory requirement. So we are just holding our numbers on this. We have some calculation, but obviously we have that's basically a management calculation. We want to be very sure, and that is the reason why we have mentioned that we will come back once we close the acquisition and close the deal, and then we'll come back to the specific numbers which has to be given. So just hold on for that.
So your guidance, when you guided that EPS accretive, this included amortization, that was not on cash EPS.
Yeah. So that has included everything, and obviously overall number EPS is the accumulation of everything at the end of the day. But obviously, specific numbers is something which we would like to give it once we are absolutely clear on the numbers. But yes, from an overall calculation basis, we are absolutely sure that this will be EPS accretive from the first year itself.
Okay, because I was confused because this year revenues are so much higher because
so
of COVID.
So
not.
Just to clarify that when we say first year, basically we are saying 21-22 because 2021 is any which way, may not be in the picture at all. So just to clarify that. So when we are saying first year itself, that basically means 21-22.
Okay, that helps. And secondly, can you just roughly indicate out of the 83 crore revenue the company had in fiscal last year, fiscal 20, how much was Chennai? Was it like 70-80% or was it like 50-60%? You just mentioned majority. Can you just give some indication on the quantum revenues coming from Chennai?
So I request you just to hold on for a couple of months, and we will definitely come back with all the details. Just a little bit of patience.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Madana Gopal from Sundaram Alternates. Please go ahead.
Hi, good morning. First on, I don't know whether you answered this, on the Hitech business, are we giving some numbers in terms of, you have mentioned EBITDA margins have improved and revenue has grown. Some sort of guidance there?
I'm sorry, for which period are you referring to?
For FY21?
No, we haven't given any numbers at this point of time. And as we mentioned, we will be happy to sort of, once we close the transaction, come back with a lot of details on the business and how we are making it forward.
Okay. Second, on digital side, are we creating a platform to enable getting more, customers, so that our throughput increases, or are we approaching this digital from a more broader perspective, because there are many things that are possible because we have access to so many customers, and getting many of them to this platform can create so many other monetization opportunities. So what is our thought process on this?
So the idea is definitely a larger scope. And while of course we are sort of moving after new customers, the idea is also how can we monetize our existing database, how can we create better services and engagement for potential upsell and cross-sell. So I think the idea is to really look at it as a broader strategy, not just as an e-commerce transaction. And we are building sort of all the pieces required for that. And this, of course, is one, of course, with the patient, but there are also opportunities with the doctor, potentially also with B2B players. So we are sort of creating a larger framework, and then we will come back as soon as we sort of have very specific details that we can offer.
As part of your this monetization thought process, is it even selling healthcare-related products, or financial as well as non-financial, can be a thought process, or will be mostly restricting to the lab plus doctor, something of that sort?
We are exploring to see whether there are opportunities for cross-sell. And at the end of the day, people, patients, and consumers identify brands with certain services, and we have to first judge whether consumers would be interested in buying other products, for example, from a lab services provider, other opportunities to do that. So those are a bunch of things that we will evaluate. I don't think that is something that we will do in the immediate sort of 1 or 2 quarters. But from a longer thought process, yes, that is definitely those are all opportunities we are looking at.
Is this team now we have got somebody who's heading it from outside, or it's an internal team which is working on this digital transition?
There is an internal team. We hired sort of a head of digital in November before COVID, so November 19. And we've been working on the building blocks of digital. As you know, this is not something you just decide and start the next day. There are a lot of technology pieces that have to be built, which is what we were doing, for the 6 to 9 months after he joined. And the digital revenues which you're seeing are obviously a consequence, of that work that went in at that point of time. We are now enhancing the team and actually to make it look at from a broader digital strategy. And we'll be very happy to sort of announce, if there are new hires, senior people that join soon. But, yes, we are definitely expanding the team and so that we are able to look at it from a broader scope.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. A reminder to our participants, if you wish to ask a question, you may enter star and 1. Our next question is from the line of Neha from JP Morgan. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. I just had one question on the realization. While it seems like the realization increase we've seen is because of the pent-up demand in elective surgeries and therefore specialized tests. One, what is our expectation of this continuing? Because we're still seeing hospital occupancies increase. Second, if I were to look at like-for-like pricing, let's say routine test versus routine test, has the competitive pressure there changed versus, let's say, pre-COVID? Or do you think that would change in market given the revenue that labs have earned in the last year?
Sorry, your question is not very clear. You're asking are there increased pressures on the routine test side?
Yeah, so I'm just asking, when I look at pricing for routine tests, let's say, has the competitive dynamics in that changed, after the revenue that some of these standalone labs have made over the last year? Are you seeing lesser competitive pressures putting, pressure on pricing? And second is on our mix, do you think the specialized component will continue to remain elevated in the near term?
So I don't think that there is any new pressure on routine testing prices because of COVID or because of any of the dynamics that changed during COVID. I think the situation is similar. If anything, it is only a pressure from perspective that obviously there is a reasonable amount of unemployment in the country, and we need to be sensitive to making sure that we are not sort of increasing prices at a time when many people are going through difficulties. So I think the only thought process is from that perspective, not from a competition perspective.
And for the specialized mix, is that expected to remain elevated over the next few quarters, or do you think this was a 1 or 2 quarter phenomena which will normalize very quickly?
No, I don't think it's not a one-off. It's not that suddenly the pent-up demand has come and sort of all landed in this quarter. Because in our industry, at least I don't find too much of sort of pent-up demand as a concept. Because people need testing at a certain point in time. If that time has gone, it's not like they can suddenly later in the next quarter get 5% on, right? So, I think the specialized test is a result of the efforts and work that is going in from our team. I think give or take, a little bit of buffer, sort of quarter by quarter, I think we will see the range of specialized tests in a similar number the quarters to come.
Understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Suruchi Jain from Opportune Wealth Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I wanted to check the overall ESG compliance at an overall company level. Also wanted to understand going forward, will you be using the ARC model, or would that be completely done away with? And if you could explain the cost structure there a little bit versus the other 2 options that we're looking at.
So your first question was on compliance?
Yes, the environment, social governance compliance. So in terms of how does the company think about this at a management level?
Sure. So look, I think the thought process is very clear that the stronger sort of the foundation pillars, the more sustainable the business in the long term. So from a regulatory compliance legal perspective, the idea is always to make sure that we're sort of toeing the line. And I think from a governance perspective, as you can see, we have a very good board with good independent directors who add a sort of a lot of value and are really engaged and committed. And the idea is to sort of keep encouraging the team, the management team, to really sort of think beyond the minimum requirements and to think more best in class and best practices. And obviously, as we know, this is a journey. This is not a switch that gets made one day because these things also take some amount of time to put in. But I'm very happy with the fact that we have progressed quite significantly over the past few years, and I think we'll continue to make that journey. So I think the overall thought very much is for the directors to play that kind of an active, engaged role, and also to sort of look at Metropolis in a holistic view of the kind of impact that we make on society. And financial numbers are obviously very important, but a larger framework in terms of ESG and the kind of role we are playing, we believe is equally important. And therefore, I think we are starting our journey also down in that direction of really looking at our performance in an even more holistic manner. So hopefully, as we start this journey, we will be able to revert, after a few quarters and keep sort of being able to give you other monitoring mechanisms to demonstrate the question that you're asking about governance and quantification of.
Fair enough. And just, my second question was on ARC, but just a follow-up on this. The dividend that you've, the interim dividend of 8 rupees, given that we still have debt on our books, so how does the company kind of decide whether to retire debt or give out dividends? Do you have like a overall framework to make that decision?
Sure. So I think on the ARC side, and if you look at our network, I think that will continue expanding. I don't think there is any plan to shut down ARCs. Of course, if there are non-productive ARCs as a part of routine hygiene, those will be sort of closed down if they have not been, not significantly growing at all. But otherwise, I think the plan is to continue to grow the network. We are currently operating in, I think, about 210 cities and towns, give or take. So it's not a 100% accurate number. But the idea is there are many more cities and towns in which Metropolis is not present, and therefore we must continue to expand sort of our visibility and presence across these markets. So I think that will definitely continue. In terms of unit economics for ARCs, as you know, it's a variable payout. So we don't have direct fixed costs. We do have indirect fixed costs, which are, as we put our sales team, we support them a little bit on marketing and branding. We support them on courier costs. But beyond that, in terms of the rental, the phlebotomist costs, the electricity, all of that is borne by the franchisee, and there's a variable revenue sharing. So it usually takes maybe, for a pure B2B ARC, usually the break even is not far because they don't have large costs in terms of rent, etc. For a B2C franchise, we find obviously the costs are more because they need to rent in reasonably visible locations. And therefore, we usually do B2C franchisees in sort of focus and seeding cities where we know the Metropolis brand pull is strong and can help the franchisee reach profitability sooner than later. On the third question, as far as dividend and debt and how we see it, I mean, dividends obviously is a matter of your performance of profit of the previous year and how you sort of see and look at liquidity. So I think we see these as two separate things. We don't see them necessarily overlapping, but of course, having said that, we have to be cautious and prudent and make sure we have, a war chest that's secure, that keeps the balance sheet strong, and at no point are we weakening it. And we feel very comfortable with continuing to declare a dividend of a payout ratio of about 30 to 40%, as we did last year. and we felt quite comfortable in doing that without stretching ourselves. We want to create some sort of a consistency for shareholders and investors in terms of dividend payouts and realization. As we have always mentioned that M&A will be our first priority, and we will use bulk of our internal capital towards M&A, which is what we are doing in this case as well. But at the same time, since the company has performed well, we would like to share that with shareholders.
Thank you so much.
That was really helpful.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Anuj Saigal from Manas Asia Equities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I actually wanted to just understand what all revenue streams or channels do you actually include in your B2C numbers, if you could give a sense of that. And also, you were talking earlier in terms of different kind of ARC centers. So, if it would be helpful if you could sort of break it down as to which all revenues are included in B2C and what is pure B2B.
So, Vijender, would you like to take that?
Yeah, in B2C, say there are two different sort of models. One is where patients walk into company-owned centers. It could be a lab, testing lab, or a patient service center. So one is that. Number two, we have third-party B2C centers also, which we call them as APSCs. Now the patients walking into these APSCs are also part of our B2C. Now within this, we also have other model where we have created some centers in doctor's chamber, which is a shop-in-shop kind of model. So there also a patient walks into, and whatever doctor prescribes, those are considered as walk into that center. So these are part of our B2C. Now, other than that, there are other segments also like home visit, wellness. These are also part of our B2C centers. In case of B2B, like ARC is a network of third-party collection centers who actually largely caters to B2B businesses in other cities or non-lab towns. And then other than that, in B2B, we also count competition labs, smaller labs, bigger labs, and hospitals also. These are all part of our B2B business.
Right. So just some clarification. So as you said, walk into your own centers, home visits, wellness is all B2C, and third-party B2C centers is also B2C. But these are all, the third-party centers are primarily owned by franchisees, right?
Yeah, third-party owned by franchisee.
Right. And you are only counting the share of revenue that you are getting from them.
Largely in APSC, we collect gross, and then after a month and we share the revenue.
Understood.
And that becomes part of our variable.
Got it. And then the doctor chambers again is a similar arrangement where you will collect the revenue and then share with them what is
there. It's a mix of both models, because some prefer net, some prefer gross.
Okay. That's
the ARC model, which is the B2B franchisee, is all on net. The retail franchisee, like Vijender said, is mostly on gross, and then we pay back. And most of the other models are combination or net.
Right. So just to be clear, when you pay back, it shows up as a cost to you in terms of the commission paid.
Yes.
But these are not commissions; these are revenue share because they're performing a service. It shows up. Yeah, it shows up in the other costs.
Right. Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take a next question from the line of Rahul Agarwal from InCred Research. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, and thank you for the opportunity. Good morning. I had three questions. Firstly, on the non-COVID side, the way I was looking at the number, the true like-to-like, non-COVID volume, right? If I remove RT-PCR, if I remove rub-off test, and I look at the volume number, I was a bit bothered with what kind of growth we are reporting. And frankly speaking, last quarter we had a discussion on this. I had the same question, and the anticipation was, a double-digit growth should actually be a possibility going into third quarter. But maybe the B2B is not really picked up, versus our expectations. So Ameera, essentially, could you please help understand, when do you see genuine 100% pre-COVID levels to be achieved on volume side, from a patient volume side? And what do you see growth going into next year, because the base is really low this year, so obviously percentage wise the number looks higher. So that's my first question to really understand the business.
So a couple of things. I think at the end of the Q2 results, when we did the call, we had actually clearly indicated that we expect Q3 the results to be much lesser than Q2 because Q3 always in our industry is a much weaker quarter because of festivities. And therefore, our own expectations and our own visibility was that we expected Q3 to be lesser than Q2. So I think the double-digit growth was slightly unrealistic expectation. That's one.
Amira, sorry to interrupt, but I am comparing it YOY, so I think the seasonality should be taken care of, right?
Not always, because again you're comparing YOY, but you're comparing 2 years that have completely different issues. So, for example, why does healthcare? Let's understand why does healthcare boom usually in Q2 and why does it come down in Q3 in a normal year? The reason is because you have monsoon season. Usually that happens in a Q2 in parts of the country that Metropolis is from, and therefore there are a lot of infections that happen as people go to work during monsoon season, and those infections play out into diagnostics and testing, and then people have to get treated, right? Now, usually what happens in a Q3 time when there is Diwali and Dussehra and people are traveling, the number of viruses in the air because you don't have kind of monsoon is lesser. And number two, because people are busy with festivities and other things, they are not looking at their health as a focus area and they actually defer it probably to Q4, right? So whether it's elective surgeries, whether it's wellness checkup, any of those. So therefore, there is a traditional seasonality that definitely plays into our industry. Now, number two, if you actually look at our last year Q3, we actually had a higher base last year Q3 because we had declared that we had taken a price increase on the retail side in Q3 last year. So our base was anyway higher. If you sort of look at it anywhere of the industry, our Q3 numbers of last year were higher than most other people from a quarter-on-quarter growth or from a traditional, like our Q2 and our Q3 last year were the same, which never happens. Normally Q3 is lower. And therefore this Q3, you will see obviously a lesser growth because the base itself effect was higher last year. That's one, and therefore the normal festivity impact came in this year. And therefore, if you see, we have given the month-to-month chart in our presentation, where you see October and December have actually shown a growth in non-COVID, but November, which was Diwali month, has shown a dip in non-COVID. So I hope that clarifies that piece. Your question about non-COVID not coming back to full normalcy, I fully agree with you. I think in the industry, it has still not come back to normalcy, but I think partly our lens is wrong. For example, when we have dengue or you have malaria or you have other infections in any year, we are not looking at the entire business as saying non-dengue and dengue because that is the infection at the time, because that's the season at that point of time. Now, COVID happens to be that infection at this point of time, so we have to look at it a little bit more holistically. Because when people are staying at home worrying about COVID, they are not going out and therefore they are not getting other diseases and infections and they are being more careful about their health. So while I understand from a financial basis why we want to separate the two, but from a customer basis, the two are completely combined, right? So therefore it is very natural that till the time COVID is growing and continuing, which it is even today, the non-COVID is not going to come back completely to normalcy because the other infections are that much lower. So my sense is personally that we will still see the normalcy, complete normalcy like a pre-COVID era, probably take another quarter or so. Post-vaccination, maybe in the first quarter of next year, we may see some sort of normalcy start to come back. But obviously this is very difficult to predict because there are many exceptional things which may happen along the way. It depends on how long vaccination takes. It also depends on how governments react to this lockdown. The fact is that, for example, in a state like Maharashtra, we are still in lockdown, right? It may not appear when you're on the road, but there are many people who are still, movie theaters are not working, malls are not working, etc., etc. So I think state by state, city by city, the lockdown restrictions are very different and the way they are actually enforced is very different. So short answer, I think my sense is it will take at least a quarter more for the true normalcy as we are talking about pre-COVID. And that all depends on government and depends on vaccination.
Got that. Thank you for the detailed answer. So another two questions left. I'll just quickly cover. So secondly, on the margin side, right? I mean, if I look at the test mix is improving, the channel mix is improving in favor of B2C, digital mix improving, home visits improving, so basically helping realization. High tech benefits, obviously when you consolidate, you will have some synergies, basically coming more from the cost side. You will have pretty much, a lot of similar things. So essentially when I'm looking at the revenue mix, it's all improving going forward. And, it's helping margins, your costs, anyway you're controlling costs, pretty decently well. Even this quarter, employees as well as the other OPEX has been pretty low and hence you had a margin beat. What I wanted to understand is, versus our understanding on the street, as analyst is basically assuming that Metropolis will improve margins going forward. But ultimately, where does this all settle at? Because, we're looking at, 28 going to 29, 30, 31 and a half, 32. And then, eventually, are we looking at a 40% number or 45% number? Long term, where do we settle at here?
Well, I personally don't believe that a 40-45% number is at all in our visibility, and not even what we are targeting. Frankly, the way we are looking at the business is that organized sector is still only 10 to 15% of the whole share, and frankly, our goal should be to increase market share with reasonable profitability and not only keep improving. I mean, there are many labs which are at 40% profitability, but none of them have scale. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there will be a balance between top line and bottom line growth. And for us, I think the important word is balance. So I don't think 40-45 at all is a number. Where can it go? Difficult to predict. But I believe that our current profitability levels, I mean, frankly, I felt even at 28-29%, we were at very good profitability levels. And there was no real desire to keep expanding the profit, but to desire to expand the top line. So I think we should really focus on it from that perspective.
Right. So basically, assuming all these benefits flow through, reasonably well, 50 bips, 100 bips improvement a year should be reasonable, right? I mean, nothing more than that should be like really focused for, as in terms of targets or something.
Look, I think 50 bits, 100 bits is doable, but again, we can't look at this year then as a base, because you've got economies of scale in this year as a base, which may or may not come next year, right? In the same way. So, for example, I'll tell you what the difference is. When suddenly you have thousands of samples of, let's say, COVID coming into our existing infrastructure, without adding too much of extra servicing costs, right? Of course, we added a lot of home visits and we added etc., but we were largely using our existing infrastructure, right? Then what happens is it creates further profitability down the line because you're not adding too much additional infrastructure. But if the same revenue next year is replaced with non-COVID business, which requires additional servicing infrastructure, then obviously that same margin profile is not going to accrue to the bottom. A lot of it just depends on your channel mix, your product mix, and that really is going to decide whether it's going to additionally add 50 to 100 basis points from here, or whether you will see 100 basis points decrease the next year, depending on how things play out. So, again, I would suggest that when you're looking at Metropolis's model, to sort of look at a more consistent profitability model and sort of play it out in that way.
Got that. And lastly, on this home visit side, similar question. So obviously home visits have been increasing, it's beneficial from a revenue per patient point of view. It's also beneficial because you said that long-term target is to double as percent to sales. Now, essentially excluding COVID, it's right now standing at about 26% of top line. Is that correct? For B2C cities, that's what you mentioned in the presentation?
Of B2C, that's right.
Yes, so it's about 26% excluding COVID for B2C, which is about 25 crore revenue, right?
That's right.
Right. So you said you want to double it as a percent to overall business, which is basically B2C business. Is that going to get achieved like pretty faster once you do that, your March 21 targets of 200 locations? Or you think overall, where does this settle as a long-term ratio? That's what I really wanted to understand. Directionally, I understand both.
I don't see this as a one-year plan because obviously first the important thing will be to increase capacity. And as we expand to the 200 cities, that will also increase costs in the short term. right? So the revenue flow through and the profitability flow through is not going to come through in the next 2 quarters or the next 12 months of the home visit expansion, right? Because if you are going to add costs to expand to 200 locations in the 12 months, the revenue and profit mix will come post that. So the way I answered it earlier also was that, look, we would like to double it, but whether that happens in 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years is very difficult to predict at this point, because the consumer behavior is changing very rapidly. And this is really changing on a month-to-month basis, and it's changing in every geography of the country. While we talk to you guys overall, every city is showing us a different dynamic, even in terms of the sentiment of how many people want to actually step out of their homes. So we will definitely continue to track this quarter by quarter, but at this point, I think besides broad direction, I'm not sure how to give quantification on it.
All right, got that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and effort to answer the question. A short question for Rakesh. Just to double confirm the RT-PCR volume this quarter, is it 350,000? Is that correct?
So exactly the number, yeah, that is correct. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. All the best for future quarters. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from the line of Hardik Bora from Union Mutual Fund. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Just a clarification I wanted to seek on the resolution that we are passing in the upcoming board meeting on the enabling resolution to raise to provide support of about 1,200 crores. So we had a 500 crore limit. We're increasing it to 1,200 crores. Any rationale that you can share for that?
Yeah, so I will take this. So what happens is that we have taken the 500 crore of investment, what we can make, and that board gives an approval that you can go ahead, up to that limit. So in the balance sheet, we already had a 130 crore which has been invested, and with the acquisition of Hitech, actually we are adding another 600 odd crores. So basically that 500 crore of approval, blanket approval, which we have taken earlier, has got breached. So now because that has got breached, it is mandatory for us to go back to the board and say that you please give us a bit of a more blanket for us to invest. So in that sense, we have just increased that 500 crore limit to 1,200 crore so that we can get that blanket. It is nothing, directional, but it is just to cover up the Hitech and then just have some cushion for the future. I hope that answers.
Yes, that does. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen.
I'm sorry, we have a hard stop.
Ma'am, would you like to add a few closing comments? That was the last question.
Sure. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and I hope we've been able to answer all your questions. I think generally Metropolis continues to sort of stand on a strong wicket. I think our growth and our EBITDA numbers are showing that. And I think more importantly, I think the building pillars or the strategic pillars for growth in the future continue to be reasonably strong. We are going to continue to drive sort of in the strategic areas as we mentioned of home services, increasing B2C, especially in our focus cities, continuing to manage costs through efficiency, and really working on our digital strategy in much more detail. I think these will be the focus areas. While we, of course, integrate the Hitech Diagnostics acquisition into the company to try and create the synergies out of that as well. We're very excited about the next few quarters, and we'll continue to share with you as things continue to progress. Thank you so much.
Thank you, members of the management. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ambit Capital, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us, and you may now disconnect.